It's Monday, October 18th, 2010, and this week's BeakerBeat, we must be crawling out of a recession as another billion-dollar deal is on the books. We'll tell you who bought who, plus a potential blockbuster drug, a court fight, and some funky numbers. Just another week in the Sanofi Genzyme buyout drama. And like all those pundits who picked the 49ers to win the Superbowl, Americans are abandoning branded meds. Find out why. All that and more in this week's edition of BeakerBeat. Hello everyone, welcome to this week's edition of BeakerBeat. I'm Mike Justice, thanks for tuning in. Well, it is the late fall, time for harvest, time to squirrel away some nuts, and Pfizer's doing just that, getting back into the buyout biz. Pfizer is buying again, snatching up King Pharmaceuticals in a $3.6 billion cash deal. The world's biggest drug maker will offer $14.25 per share, a 40% premium. This comes just 2 years after King absorbed Alpharma at a $1.6 billion takeover. Pain drugs are clearly profitable. Doctors wrote 320 million scripts for pain meds last year, and the market is growing as the population ages. Pfizer's current drugs include Lyrica for nerve pain and Celebrex, an arthritis relief drug. King adds several more to that list, including its tamper-resistant opioid Ambita, recently approved by the FDA as an alternative to the often abused OxyContin. King also has a pipeline of new pain treatments, which Pfizer chief Jeffrey Kindler named as one reason for the deal. Another, of course, is the immediate revenue boost from the already marketed drugs. The downside here, Pfizer's looking for at least $200 million in cost savings from this deal. Translation, job cuts. Expect those cuts to transpire over the course of the next 3 years. Well, tell us what you think about this story or any story that you see in today's show. It's very simple. You click on the orange button below me. A box will pop up. You type in your comment. Send it to me. I promise I'll read and respond to every one of them. And when you're done watching BeakerBeat, check out Beaker's blog, where we take a look at the future plans for one of pharma's biggest players. Plus, a $6 billion biotech company considers its options, but will they sell? All that and more on Beaker's blog. So this tree is pretty scary, perfect for Halloween. Sanofi Aventis is also getting its own kind of scare. Turns out Genzyme may have a blockbuster on its hands. More money, more money, more money. Genzyme's potential blockbuster, alemtuzumab, or Campath, is one of the prime late-stage assets in its pipeline that compelled Sanofi to bid $18.5 billion for the company in the first place. Now Genzyme researchers say that a 5-year follow-up on patients recruited for a mid-stage study showed that 87% experienced no worsening in their condition. That could translate into sales of $2 billion. Bad news for Sanofi, which projected likely sales of just $700 million. A new blockbuster for Genzyme could make the Boston biotech worth much more. There's also new developments in the buyout offer. Some shareholders are suing Genzyme's board to try and spark some action. Meanwhile, the Wall Street Journal has done the math, and CEO Henry Termeer stands to lose about $9 million if the $69 per share deal goes through. If it reaches $71 a share, he'll be square. And the plot thickens. The FDA is getting serious about using the law to crack down on pharma companies who break the rules. In the second recent heads-up from an agency official, FDA Deputy Chief Eric Blumberg said pharma execs may be criminally prosecuted for off-label marketing violations. He says big settlements with the Department of Justice aren't cutting it, and his comments follow FDA Commissioner Margaret Hamburg's promise that her agency would go after individual executives for marketing infractions. In a letter to Senator Charles Grassley, whose Finance Committee has dogged the pharma industry for years, Hamburg said FDA would charge company execs with misdemeanor violations of the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. While that hasn't happened yet, it seems they are itching to strike. Could they be searching for someone to use as an example? We shall see. Time for some quick hits now, and at the request of the FDA, Abbott Labs is withdrawing its weight loss drug Meridia from the U.S., Canada, and Australia. This comes after clinical trial results link it to increased risk of heart attack and stroke. The FDA's request is based primarily on the results of the 6-year SCOUT study. It involved about 10,000 patients and was requested by European regulatory authorities as a post-marketing commitment to evaluate cardiovascular safety in high-risk patients. Sanofi Aventis is cutting 1,700 jobs as it restructures its U.S. pharma operations. 1,400 of those will be sales reps. Of the French drug maker's 13,000 U.S. employees, 6,900 work in the pharmaceutical operations division. Sanofi plans to cut 25% of the headcount there. The job cuts are part of a $2.8 billion cost reduction plan announced last year. 300 positions will be cut from the company's Bridgewater, New Jersey site. A new warning has been released by the FDA after its review of bone drug safety. Enough evidence was found for a new warning about the risk of a rare but serious fracture of the thigh bone. This comes after the possible link was made between fractures and and a class of osteoporosis drugs known as bisphosphonates. This is the first time the FDA has required a new warning for the drug's labels. It will be added to those approved for osteoporosis, such as Merck's Fosamax, Roche and GSK's Boniva, Warner-Chilcott's Actonel, and Novartis's Reclast. It won't apply to bisphosphonates marketed for cancer patients or Paget's disease, such as Novartis's Zometa. Another example of the economic downturn taking its toll, 3 Massachusetts-based medical device firms, NMT Medical, Advanced Source Biomaterials, and Neurometrics, are all in danger of being delisted from their respective stock exchanges. California-based Endosphere is relocating to Ohio. CEO Jim McKinley believes the move will allow the company to receive a technology investment tax credit of about $2 million from the state. Meanwhile, BioCryst Pharma will shift its headquarters to Durham, North Carolina after 24 years in Birmingham, Alabama. The developer is pushing its antiviral flu drug Peramivir towards an FDA approval. Good news from Big Pharma. GlaxoSmithKline will donate 400 million tablets a year to treat children in Africa at risk of intestinal worms. These worms are said to cause more ill health in school-age children than any other infection. Checking money matters now, and Belgium's UCB has snagged the licensing rights to 2 experimental therapies from Sanofi Therapeutics. The deal is worth up to $745 million in milestones and comes with an upfront payment and a $20 million equity investment. UCB wants to strengthen its pipeline for neurology drugs. Roche's sales are down 7% to $12.1 billion. Why? Poor performance from its cancer drug Avastin and fall off from last year's pandemic sales of Tamiflu. The company expects global pricing pressures to cut revenue growth by 2% this year. After a rough summer being dumped by BMS and having its CEO bail out, Exelixis is bouncing back. The San Francisco-based company and BMS have completely revamped their relationship. BMS will license 2 Exelixis drug development programs for $60 million upfront and $505 million in combined milestones. BMS gained the licensing rights to a new drug aimed at diabetes as well as anti-inflammatory therapies. SIGA Technologies has been selected to deliver a smallpox antiviral drug to Uncle Sam's Biodefense stockpile. The contract is worth at least $500 million, but can easily reach $2.8 billion if HHS's Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority picks up all the options. The agency intends to file the contract once it resolves a protest from Chimerix, which is protesting its unsuccessful bid for the contract covering 1.7 million courses of the antiviral. SIGA shares rose 46% on the news. Immunogen and Novartis are teaming up on targeted anti-cancer therapeutics in a deal worth nearly $250 million and potentially much more. Novartis will pay a $45 million upfront fee, and for each successful anti-cancer therapeutic, Immunogen could get milestone payments totaling $200 million plus royalties on product sales. A reminder now that AdvaMed 2010, the MedTech conference, begins this week, and Beaker will be there. This October, life sciences CEOs and executives from around the world will gather in Washington, D.C. for AdvaMed 2010, the MedTech conference. Unlike traditional industry conventions, this conference brings together top industry insiders with a wide range of meaningful subjects up for discussion. From regulatory affairs and reimbursement to IP and business development, if it's important to the industry, you will find it here. Guests will include Dr. Margaret Hamburg and CBS News anchor Katie Couric, along with hundreds of industry leaders. Beaker is an official media partner, and we invite you to join us there. Click on the link on our homepage to learn more and register for your spot at AdvaMed 2010, the MedTech conference.
It just doesn't matter! 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 It doesn't matter!
You know, squirrels spend a lot of time and effort in the fall hiding nuts. Turns out they don't even use most of them. Kind of like what U.S. consumers are doing with their prescriptions. In Europe, governments have been forcing prices downward, much to pharma's chagrin. In the U.S., consumers are following suit on their own. According to the Wall Street Journal, more and more patients are simply refusing to pay for their prescriptions. Why? Well, mostly because they can't afford it, either because their co-insurance is too high or because their high-deductible insurance plans force them to foot the entire bill. And for branded drugs, that can be substantial. This abandonment, as it's called, when patients refuse to buy an already filled prescription, was up by 55% during the second quarter of this year compared to 4 years ago. One pharmacy reports over 100 scripts are abandoned each week. Some doctors are moving patients to generics and away from branded meds they prefer just to make sure that the patients will actually end up using the drugs. The Wall Street Journal notes that the drug makers' assistance programs are helping more patients than ever. One company that processes those claims says they're up to 500,000 per month, up from 300,000 at the end of 2009. All of this obviously puts a hurt on the bottom line. It will be interesting to see how much pharma can take and when patients will feel it's okay to go back to branded drugs. Well, that's it for this week's edition of BeakerBeat. I'm Mike Justice. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week. And hopefully, we'll see you this week at AdvaMed 2010, the MedTech Conference. Sit, Beaker. Sit. Good dog.